hello from Brussels, I was saying. I'm particularly happy and honored to have been invited to this event today, in a moment where discussions on the Fit for 55 package are really up to speed, and Slovenia is holding the presidency of the Council. As you know, at the core of the Fit for 55 package is a more ambitious climate target for 2030. And why do we need that one? Because we have engaged ourselves in a path towards climate neutrality by 2050, and we have to have important achievements by the middle of our parcours. Otherwise, we will not get there. You know as well that last July, the European climate law entered into force. And there we have legislation which is applicable to all member states and to all sectors of the economy, so that we reach our target of 55% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions compared to 1990 levels, and thereafter climate neutrality by 2050. As it has been conceived, this package of Fit for 55 is a combination of upgraded existing legislation, so legislation which existed, but we need to upgrade it to put it fit for purpose, plus a number of new initiatives in a wide range of fields: climate, energy, transport, fuels, land use, agriculture, and forestry, mainly. We know that reaching these objectives entails a deep transformation of our economy and of our society, and this transformation needs to be socially fair. What can be qualified as not leaving anyone behind as a slogan is not a slogan. We know very well that solidarity and equity are two values which are very much at the core of the European Union's project. Fairness is to be understood in this package as well as fairness among member states, fairness among industry, therefore all sectors contributing, fairness towards citizens and consumers, and certainly fairness in the context of our international endeavors. We know that these goals are ambitious, but our deep analysis of impacts and alternatives and options that we had ahead of us showed that these objectives are achievable. Of course, this comes with challenges, but these challenges come as well with opportunities to move towards a more sustainable future, a more prosperous future, a future which spurs innovation, creating investment and jobs of a higher added value. And Slovenia is very well placed to grasp these opportunities, the opportunities of this transition. In previous decades, Slovenia has made progress in laying the foundations of a low-carbon economy. However, its economy is still more carbon and energy intensive than the European Union's average, but there are still plenty of opportunities to make Slovenia's economy more resilient, more sustainable, and therefore reduce systemic inequality across the whole society. Let me go through the main parts of this package. We have our cornerstone of our policy, which is the emission trading system, which has brought already emissions down from the power generation and the energy intensive industries by over 40% in the last 16 years. And to further strengthen the system, we have proposed to lower the overall cap, the overall limit of overall emissions allowed, and increasing therefore the annual reduction rate of allowances which are put on the market. We also propose to phase out what is called the free emission allowances for aviation, as we are now entering in a period where we are combining ETS and aviation for intra-European flights We're combining that with the CORSIA, so-called CORSIA system, in the context of the International Aviation Civil Aviation Organization. So it's a combination of our intra-EU ETS system with the worldwide system of CORSIA. And also in this ETS system, we have proposed to include for the first time shipping emissions. We have also proposed to expand ETS to 2 sectors which are highly energy consumers and which are highly emitters. And these are the sectors of road transport and buildings. And so we are proposing to extend ETS to the fuels used in these 2 sectors. So ETS is addressing industry, is addressing economic actors. We have another side of the coin, which is legislation addressing the member states and what we call effort sharing regulation. And so there, the effort sharing regulation ensures that the effort is also goes beyond the sectors covered by ETS, and it sets national emission reduction targets for all member states, covering, well, building, road, the maritime transport, agriculture, waste, small industries. And we are proposing to reduce emissions in the sectors covered by the effort sharing, to reduce emissions by 40% to compared to 2005 levels, which is a substantial increase in ambition, as the current target is only 29%. And these national targets are calculated to ensure fairness, as I was saying, among member states through a GDP per capita based target distribution. And these efforts range from stabilizing emissions, so 0 decrease, to decrease of 50%, so halving the emissions in some cases. The Fit for 55 package will assist Slovenia in achieving its revised targets for 2030, which is minus 27% below 2005 levels. And the package maintains the current flexibilities so that these reductions in the different economic sectors can be done in a cost-efficient manner. So we have ETS, we have the effort sharing. Now we go to the CO2 standards for cars and vans. You know that we had set some already. There are already some which are in force, and this has proven a very good tool to reduce emissions and, dare I say, more importantly, to deeply transform the automobile industry, which has picked up the challenge. And we see that the increase of low emission or even zero emission vehicles during last year has been much more than expected. But still, we are far from being there where we need to be. And so we propose to strengthen the CO2 performance standards for cars and vans. The target is that the average emissions would need to come down by to diminish by 55% for new cars, and by 50% for new vans in 2030, and this compared to the levels of this year. And we need that the emissions of both new cars and new vans disappear, so diminish by 100% in 2035. Another sector which is important, it is the sector addressing the carbon removals. We know that unfortunately the decline in natural carbon removals is very strong and very challenging. And therefore, we have to use the so-called LULUCF regulation, the regulation covering land use, forestry, and agriculture, to increase that sink and therefore compensate eventually for emissions that could not be disappearing. So we have introduced a reform to simplify the system, to make it more ambitious, and to put it in a better integrated policy framework. So the proposal of the Commission sets an overall EU target for carbon removals by natural sinks, equivalent to 310 million tons of CO2 emissions by 2030. And the national targets will require member states to care for and expand their carbon sinks to meet the target. And we aim at having the sector of land use, forestry and agriculture, all that together, we aim at that sectors to become climate neutral by 2035. We have also initiatives, as it couldn't be otherwise, in renewables and energy efficiency. Because to transform our system to diminish the emissions, we need to change the way in which we produce and use our energy. Because energy production and use accounts for 75.75% of the EU emissions. So it is clear that we have to accelerate the green transition of the energy system. So to make it happen, we have the Renewable Energy Directive, which set an increased target to produce 40% of our energy from renewable sources by 2030. And all member states will contribute to this goal, and there are specific targets that are proposed for the energy, renewable energy use in transport, heating and cooling, buildings and industry. The best emission is the one that doesn't exist, and therefore the best use of energy is the one which is not, when we are not using energy. Therefore the reduction, the overall reduction of energy use is very important. It's very important as well in terms of tackling energy poverty. And therefore the Energy Efficiency Directive is setting more ambitious binding annual goals to reduce the use of energy at EU level. We are aiming at overall doubling the annual energy saving obligation for member states overall. As I was saying at the beginning, and as we all know, these deep transformations do have social impacts. It has positive social impacts. It has better lives, better air quality, more higher added value jobs, but it also can affect most vulnerable parts of our society and of our industry. Therefore, we have coupled with the new ETS, we have coupled it with the so-called social climate fund, and it's precisely in our quest to leave no one behind. This social fund is aimed to address the social impacts arising namely from the extension of ETS to the roads and transport, and the effects that carbon pricing can have on vulnerable households, micro enterprises, and transport users. The fund should provide a bit more than 72 billion euros to member states for the period 2025 to 2032 to support measures and investments that aim at reducing the reliance on fossil fuels through increased energy efficiency in buildings. You know that 75% of the building stock in the Union is energy inefficient. It's so we have to refurbishing of buildings, decarbonizing the heating and cooling of the buildings, and granting improved access to finance for zero and low emission mobility and transport. We are also proposing, so we have the social funds, but you know that there are a big part of the revenues of ETS go directly to member states, and the Commission is proposing that the entirety of the auction revenues is used to advance climate action and energy transformation overall. In all this, innovation and investment and innovation have a crucial role to play. And we need large-scale investment, both public and private. And therefore, we have a number of support mechanisms and to for new technologies to be upscaled and deployed in our system, and for modernizing our energy systems. In particular, we are proposing a substantial increase of the Innovation Fund with an additional 50 million allowances from the existing ETS system, and adding to that 150 million allowances from the new emission trading system sectors, namely building and road, as well as all the emissions that will be freed from the introduction of a carbon border adjustment mechanism. The Innovation Fund will have for the next coming years, depending, of course, the amount depends on the price of the carbon in the market, but currently we can estimate that around 20 billion euros will be invested in the Innovation Fund in this decade, 2020-2030. To bridge the investment gap in low carbon innovation and the energy system modernization in lower income member states, we propose to increase the volume of the so-called modernization fund, which already exists, as you know, by adding a number of new important allowances, 2.5% of allowances under the current ETS. We are in a moment, the Green Deal, Fit for 55, I should have said at the beginning, is a way to render concrete and materialize one of the different ways, but it is the Green Deal. The Green Deal was meant to be our growth strategy, and it was shaped, as you remember, before this pandemic. With the pandemic, the Green Deal becomes even more our growth strategy, because we cannot afford having a recovery which is not sustainable. So the funds of the recovery funds from the COVID-19 crisis have to be used as well to build back better. We have also we should not forget that we still have the 7 years budget of the Union, where 30% of the programs under the 2 trillion multi-annual financial framework and the Next Generation EU have to be dedicated to support climate action. And 37% of the recovery and resilience facility has to be used in Green Deal type of activities. So there are many opportunities for Slovenia to benefit from the funding available for the green transition, for the green and fair transition. And for example, as you know, Slovenia's coal regions in transition can benefit from the Just Transition Fund, precisely to go into the path of the Fit for 55. And investments in energy efficiency will improve Slovenia's building stock and decrease air pollution and address energy poverty, which is faced not only in Slovenia by lower income households. So there are a number of challenges, but there are a number of opportunities to undertake this deep change. There are also opportunities for business when we're upscaling innovative solutions. We are creating new business opportunities, and our industry will become front runner there where it is not, and will keep its competitiveness. So to conclude, I would like to say that the Fit for 55 package is a set of proposals that are connected, that are complementary with each other, and are there to reply, to address the climate urgency, to modernize our economy, to have a sustainable future. And we need this package and the revenues it generates to ensure that we have a Europe which is fair, green, competitive, which is sharing responsibility evenly across different actors and member states. And so the proposals of the Fit for 55 are being now discussed by the co-legislators, the Parliament and the Council. And Slovenia, who is holding the presidency of the Council now, has an important drive in making this change advance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam de la Torre, please, for this brief presentation of the package. Please stay with us for a couple of more minutes as we open the floor for questions from the audience, and we join your call on Slovenian presidency taking the package forward, hopefully in the negotiations. Tako da lepo prosim, če kakšno vprašanje za gospod de la Torre, namestnico direktorata DG Klima. Izvolite. Ne grize, brez skrbi. Madam de la Torre, may I pose a question to you?
Of course.
If I understood you correctly, you did mention the climate emergency and the fact that we need to act swiftly and decisively. And we see Europe has, in the last year, parts of Europe have been hit quite hard by the climate consequences. And on the other hand, science and reports are telling that there is no time to spare, that we need decisive, immediate action. On the other hand, we see member states and other countries are still lagging behind their fair share or their contribution to the goal of achieving 1.5 degrees Celsius. Does, in the Commission's view, the package Fit for 55 contribute its fair share towards achieving the Paris Climate Agreement and the goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius? Limiting global warming?
You've raised at least two very interesting issues. One I did not mention, I'm happy you raised it, I'll come back to it. Your very question is, are we fit for purpose? And I would say yes. We have little time, but we still have time to act. And we are lucky that we are working with, all of us working in a realm which has a strong scientific basis that you have very well mentioned. So science tells us which are the challenges, but science also has helped us in shaping a number of pathways, which include innovation, but not only, which shows in our analysis, at least we've seen that with the options we have proposing, as I was saying, it's a coherent package. With all of this together, we will manage to comply with the Paris agreements and not to enter into the emergency that climate is having. This being said, as you are right, there are some parts of the world who are still not there, and part of our our climate diplomacy is focused very much in making that the important emitters in the world do follow that ambition. I think it's not a random event, the fact that following the EU's announcement of becoming the first part of the world which is climate neutral by 2050, a number of big players in the world have been announcing, not last very recently, we have Russia having made announcements, China having made announcements, of the United States coming back to the Paris Agreement. So we see that there is a movement, that it's not enough yet, but we are moving there because, yes, we emit in the Union only 89% of total global emissions. So either we go all together or we will not succeed. But I'm quite confident that we will be succeeding. But you mentioned at the beginning of your intervention these extreme weather events that we are suffering. And it is true that our Green Deal foresees, yes, the mitigation measures, which we have been discussing on the Fit for 55, but also we all know that even if we stopped emitting today, the effects of the damaging effects of climate change are there and will continue to be there. So we have not only to become climate neutral by 2050, but we have to become resilient by 2050. There is an adaptation strategy which has plenty of actions that we will not have time to discuss here today, but I'm happy to discuss that in a moment. And we have what we call the mission in Horizon Europe. We have a mission which is precisely aiming at addressing climate adaptation and enabling the regions of Europe to make sure that they have the tools to do risk assessment, the risks that are implied by the climate change, and to address them and to deploy solutions to those extreme weather events, resistant of infrastructures, embedding the risk in the calculation of the risks of the investments, etc.
Kakšno vprašanje, prosim? Ja. Bom kar mikrofon brej, da bo lažje potem.
I'd like to address this question from the perspective of consumers, and I think this the whole process can be successful only if a solution will be convenient, affordable, and sustainable for consumers, so that sustainable choice will be an affordable one. But we are a bit worried that in countries like Slovenia, consumers are attracting a consumption model which is dangerous, but we just say high prices and no real options. I'm talking about the transport, I'm talking about the housing, and unless the other we will have a serious problem how to look for sustainable choices. Another problem which we are facing at the moment is already starting with this increasing price of energy. Actually, there's no real basis for that, and the trust of consumers in general is also on the very low level. So how the Commission will address those questions?
I am really sorry, but the sound was extremely bumpy and I could barely understand anything. But I seem to hear, but please correct me, that you are addressing the consumer choices, the consumer behaviors. Am I right?
Yes, can you hear me better now?
Yes, I can hear you.
The question was basically, consumers have no real choice in Slovenia. They will be put the burden of additional costs stemming from the package, but they will not have a sustainable alternative solution in mobility, transport, or in the housing sector in terms of heating, for instance. So, and the second question was, what is the response of the Commission regarding the current hike in energy prices?
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know, I might have a problem probably because your sound was very bumpy as well, but I heard a little bit better. So the first is for the choices of the consumers. We are all consumers, we are all travelers, and we have to make the right choices. So there are several aspects here. One is the awareness raising of what are the effects of our own personal behaviors. And that's something that all of us in the public service, but also companies are very well aware of these issues, that we make sure that we make our citizens understand what we're at. Once you have understood, it's true that you are not always acting because you might have, for example, difficulties in accessing cleaner fuels or accessing cleaner transport. And from the union side, what we're doing to address that is a number of things. By putting a price on the emissions, we have an incentive for companies and governments to deploy solutions which are less emitter. And the more we upscale these new technologies and new business models, the lower the price will be and the higher it will become to emit. So that's a way of changing the collective behavior. When one has, for the transport sector, that's a very, it's a very important sector because it's a sector which affects all of us. We all go to work, we all travel, or we all move, and the goods are moved. And and we know that the transport sector is a sector which has continuously been increasing emissions. There, what we have to do in cities, we have to have a better urban planning, urban land management. We have to apply nature-based solutions. We have to have more public transport. we have to have, excuse me, we have to have a more low emission or zero emission transport. But for that, you will tell me, yeah, but I need to plug in my car and I need to fuel my car with hydrogen. Yes, that is one of the initiatives I did not mention, but one of our initiatives is precisely a directive to make sure that each X kilometers we have plugs for our cars or refueling stations for hydrogen. So all this has to come together. This is the complexity of the affair, is that there are no simple solutions that with one of them you will address it. You need to put all of them at the same time. We need to invest in developing lower carbon fuels so that the heating and cooling, the heating mainly, I think you both addressed that. We have different heating systems, and all this, yes, has a cost. But as I was saying, there are several revenue sources from the union, and I'm sure from the member states as well, but from the union certainly, to support this transformation and to make it happen for those that are suffering, that will be suffering the effects in the short term. Because in the long term, it is more expensive not to do anything than to do this deep transformation. But in the short term, there can be places where this becomes more expensive.
Thank you very much, Madam de la Torre, for taking the time. Hopefully you hear us a little bit better, and apologies for the technical difficulties. We're all slightly struggling with this form of conferences, and again, thank you for taking the time, and best of luck with the package in the negotiations.
Thank you very much for your invitation, and best of luck to all of us and to Slovenia in particular. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Tako.